Watching these scenes, we are reminded that a priest's life is filled with interpersonal relationships.
The work of a priest involves a continuous stream of personal and ministerial relationships and interactions, as well as many expectations.
In those relationships, it is important for the priest to develop and nurture attitudes that respect individual rights and dignity.
Today we have a lot more insight, knowledge, and appreciation for the meaning of healthy psychosexual development during priest formative years, seminary formation, and ongoing formation. In fact, it is much different today than it was for many of us during our time of seminary formation.
We're all aware that problems arise within the priesthood in areas of intimacy, sexuality, and boundaries. We recognize and wish to respond to these needs.
In doing so, we have the opportunity to rediscover and reclaim the greatness of our call, to live authentically our lives of service, and to discover a greater depth of joy and reward in our ministry as priests and persons committed to a celibate lifestyle.
Celibacy calls for a unique consideration of intimacy, sexuality, and boundary issues, since priests have a special trust from people. Celibacy does not mean living without sexual awareness and responses. These are a natural part of being human, as designed by God. It is our actions, not our feelings or imagination, that determine if we are true to our lifelong commitment to celibacy. We must be aware of these feelings and attractions, then manage them in a positive, ethical manner.
This print and video program is designed to help you talk with other priests and reflect on intimacy, sexuality, and boundary issues in a practical, realistic way. We hope you have taken the time to read the written material which has been prepared by your fellow priests. These articles and the resource guide are to be used in conjunction with this video. The articles and the vignettes you see in this video are designed to promote discussion and reflection. This resource is meant to increase awareness and serve as a vehicle of our ongoing formation.
This resource is a response to a genuine need among priests and is designed to be a positive formational opportunity in addressing those needs. We are grateful to NOCIRC for designing and developing this resource entitled Priestly Relationships, Freedom Through Boundaries.
There are many different perspectives on these topics. This resource represents one way to address them. Kim Hood will guide you through a series of situational vignettes which will evoke discussion and reflection.
Thank you, Bishop. As you view the situations presented in the following vignettes, you'll note some recurring themes. These include awareness, sensitivity, motivation, judgment, and supervision, all of which are affected by personal attitudes. Thoughts and actions arising from these themes are only briefly touched upon in these vignettes. They are further discussed in the printed materials which accompany this resource. The materials are designed to be used in study or support groups and also in larger gatherings of priests. Of course, the situations presented in this video don't apply to everyone in every case. Nonetheless, you may find yourself identifying with the circumstances and actions. Perhaps you too have been close to some of the challenges these priests are facing, or the situations may evoke discussions stemming from related events in developing healthy boundaries in your priestly ministry. The first situation deals with potential boundary violations that can happen within spiritual direction or pastoral counseling. Angela has been in spiritual direction with the parish priest, Father James Edwards, for many months. She had originally sought his counsel to help her deal with an unhappy marriage. After the sessions began, her husband Bill was diagnosed with a terminal illness. She now has the added burden of dealing with the illness and impending death of her husband.
Angela?
Oh, Jim. Thank you for coming over.
So, how's Bill?
He lapsed into a coma about an hour ago. The doctor isn't very optimistic that he'll ever come out of it. His vital signs are strong, though. He could hang on for a week or months. Who knows?
I'm so sorry, Angela. I really want to be with you through this crisis.
I really appreciate everything you're doing, Jim. Especially when I need someone to lean on.
I'm just glad that I can be here for you.
Bill never came out of the coma, but he did live for a number of months. And during that stressful time, Angela and Father Edwards developed a closer bond, perhaps creating a difficult situation for both parties.
Hello?
It's me, Jim.
Oh, hi, Jim.
Just thought I'd call to see how you're doing. I realize it's a little late, but I wanted to make sure you're okay. You seemed a little down when we met this afternoon.
I'm a little better now, but I really appreciate your checking on me.
Well, I don't mind at all, Angela. In fact, if you don't mind my saying so, I've grown to enjoy our time together.
Well, I appreciate your support. Thanks for letting me bend your ear and cry on your shoulder. It means, you mean so much to me.
Good.
Now let's take a closer look at this situation. Was Father Edwards taking advantage of Angela's vulnerability or her trust? The late-night telephone calls and statements like, "I've grown to enjoy our time together," may be part of a subtle conditioning on Father Edwards' part, which takes advantage of Angela's vulnerability. This behavior may cause Angela to feel special and to expect and be receptive to expressions of care that are not in keeping with a ministerial relationship. The priest needs to continually be aware of his responsibility to be clear about and maintain the pastoral boundaries of such a relationship. Secondly, it is important to know the potential risk of taking advantage of a person at a vulnerable time, whether intentionally or not. The person being counseled may not be receiving what the priest is supposed to be offering, which is the strength and support offered by our faith during a time of suffering and loss. Finally, let us ask ourselves, whose needs are really being met in this situation? Remember, behind any act, there is usually a need to be met. Ministerial and counseling relationships should never be used as opportunities for gratifying one's own needs. The focus must be on the needs of others. Here are some steps you can take to help reaffirm your purpose in pastoral counseling or spiritual direction, being able to serve your parishioners in their times of need and vulnerability. From the beginning, it is important to define the relationship and reinforce the nature of it. That means paying attention to the basics, such as establishing an appropriate place for the spiritual direction to take place, maintaining ministerial and professional demeanor, and meeting within reasonable established office hours, to name a few. A priest always needs to be aware of his commitment to celibacy, and that commitment offers a unique freedom to be relational. But with that freedom comes a serious responsibility to be aware of the needs of others and to not manipulate their feelings. At all times, the priest needs to be prudent in his words and actions with others. Otherwise, there is the danger of his giving signals and cues that he's open to actions which lie beyond the bounds of what is appropriate. Additionally, the priest must watch for warning signs that the relationship may be moving outside the realm of a ministerial focus. He must be aware that his behavior may have contributed to that happening. As in the vignette you just saw, it could be the frequent late-night calls, intimate conversations, or other words and actions that suggest motivation which goes beyond the counseling relationship. These actions can be a manipulation of the other person's vulnerability that fosters in a person an emotional attachment to the other. From time to time, it's a good idea for the priest to step back and assess the situation, looking first at his own feelings and motivations, as well as the effect of his behavior on the parishioner. If after assessing his situation, a priest senses an attraction to the person being ministered to, he needs to seek the counsel of a priest friend or confessor, spiritual director, a professional colleague, or his priest support group. In this example, we'll deal with the potential boundary issues arising from how priests interact with staff and volunteers. Father Andrew Dyer and his staff assistant Vivian Toff are attending a parish council meeting.
Is he always the same?
Oh, yeah, you're new around here. I guess you didn't know. You'll get used to it.
I guess.
How's everything else?
By the way, Vivian, I want to thank you for the wonderful work you've been doing. I don't know what the council would do without your excellent notes and agendas, very well organized. And I'm sure everyone on the council feels the same way.
Thanks, Father. Just doing my job.
Well, you certainly go above and beyond the call of duty. Oh, I almost forgot. Would you mind picking up my dry cleaning on your way to the office in the morning? It's Thompson's Cleaners. You go right past it, right?
Sure.
Thanks much.
The two scenes you just saw raise some interesting questions about Father Andrew Dyer. As you saw in the first scene, we must always be aware of the appropriateness of what we're doing and its interpretation. Hugs are not always appreciated. As illustrated in the second scene, it is crucial to be aware of one's role as an employer, making sure to honor the contract, whether written or implied, between staff members and ourselves. Expecting an employee to do one's personal errands is an exploitation of one's power. Venturing outside the expectations of priestly behavior can be boundary violations, whether the priest is aware of his actions or not. Additionally, a priest must always be aware of the difference between expectations and exploitation. The line between the two can easily be blurred, resulting in manipulative, coercive behavior on the part of the priest. With some self-evaluation, the priest can easily avoid that sort of behavior. Here are a few things to consider in day-to-day relationships with staff. First, the priest needs to be sensitive to the emotional compliance of an employee. Such compliance means the employee tolerates unreasonable, demeaning, or beyond the call of duty requests for the sake of job security. Emotional compliance is reinforced in other ways as well, such as through the power of the priest, both perceived and real, particularly by laypersons. It is important to understand the dynamics of that power differential or imbalance of power, and to deal with it as objectively as possible. When a priest uses power to gain something tangible or to fulfill an emotional need, his actions go far beyond contracts and agreement. Such actions constitute boundary violations. Respect is a basic human right and need, and when a priest uses his position of power for personal gain, it shows a lack of regard for the individual. The negative effect is compounded when the priest fails to realize he has crossed a boundary. In the next vignette, we'll examine the potential boundary situation present in dealing with adolescents. The Williamsons are having a get-together around their swimming pool. They and many of the families at this gathering are members of the same parish.
Father Erickson, or Charlie as he's encouraged the parishioners to call him, is a young priest in the parish. He's dropped by at the invitation of the Williamsons.
Hey, Susan!
All right, Father Charlie, I'm so glad you could make it.
And great day for a pool party. So I figured I'd show up, keep an eye on you guys.
Hey, Father Charlie, come on, get in the pool. Come on, you big baby, let's go, come on.
Come on, Father, get in the pool. Just jump in, you're one of us. Come on.
Well, you asked for it.
All right, excellent, Father Charlie.
Later in the party, after making a phone call, Father Erickson happens upon a small group of young people.
Hey,
Father Charlie, where did you come from?
What's up now?
Don't say anything. Please, Father?
An interesting day for Father Charlie. Let's talk about some of the issues raised in this situation. The first is role modeling. What sort of example is Father Erickson setting for the teens? And how is he affecting the expectations of the parents who are gathered at the party? Ordinarily, when a priest is present with a group of adolescents, he is there more as a priest than a best friend. Another issue involved here is the need to show assertive behavior when it is appropriate. It may be damaging to hook adolescents into special feelings about a priest, particularly if that priest has his own gratification or self-image in mind, or even worse, if he is uncertain about his own feelings. If a priest is to head off serious problems in dealing with adolescents, keep these important points in mind. First, a priest in this situation needs to recognize what's going on. He needs to check his motives, actions, and the needs of the adolescents with whom he deals in his ministry. Also, he needs to be aware of the appropriateness of any physical contact with adolescents, even more so when alcohol is involved. Adolescents often have crushes on adults they admire. Any physical actions, like wrestling, hugging, for example, may be interpreted by a young person as a romantic or sexual gesture. The priest also needs to be aware of behavior based on passivity or naivete, either his or the adolescent's. Though a priest may feel that he is empathizing with young parishioners by acting like one of them or looking the other way when they display inappropriate behavior, he is actually sending the wrong message. At this impressionable stage of their lives, young people need strong examples in order to help establish their own boundaries and define their roles in life. So that's why it is so important for adults to act like adults, and even more critical for priests to act like adults. Sure, it's important to relate to young people, but it needs to be done as a minister of the church. Our next situation examines the potential boundary aspects of dealing with employees from a position of power, which results in harassment. This is a typical Catholic high school. The principal is Father Christopher McCauley, a 60-year-old priest, veteran school teacher, and administrator. A staff member in the office is Irene Watkins, a young mother. She is currently dealing with the illness of her parent, a situation which has caused her to be late for work many times.
You're late again, Irene.
Well, I know, Father, I'm sorry, but
I don't want to hear any more buts. Do you realize how many times this has happened this past month? I can't help but think how it's going to compromise your work. Sometimes I think you hang on to this job only for the convenience of the people in your family, rather than for the needs of the people in this school.
Well, I wanted to tell you that
Our workday begins at 8 a.m. Everyone is expected to be here, at their desk, and working at that time. You don't seem to care when you get here.
I've got some temporary problems that I need to get resolved, and I hope they get resolved soon.
Well, they'd better be, or I can foresee your stay in this office as being very temporary at best.
Once again, there is the problem of abuse of power by a priest who, in this case, also is an employer. When that power is used to intimidate, insult, or humiliate, it is harassment. Here are guidelines which will enable us to be aware of how to avoid harassment in the workplace. One of the most important things we can do is to be sensitive of others' needs and circumstances as we communicate. This is a factor in many harassment cases, particularly in gender and sexual harassment. It simply means the employer is stepping beyond the evaluation of a person's performance. Instead, he is judging the person's motivation. Father McCauley's words and manner invaded Irene's personal world by judging her motivation for holding the job in his office. And that is a boundary violation. If we are human and humane, as well as ministers of the gospel, our stance toward all people, including employees, is one of respect. Awareness and sensitivity on the part of the priest can be key deterrents to harassment. Employers must also be skilled communicators. This means representing the needs of the institution without berating, talking down to, intimidating, or publicly humiliating employees. As an employer, a priest is also one who ministers to the employee. Self-awareness and self-assessment are required to realize and understand how others are affected by the power of a priest. It is critical that he understand the hurt to others when he abuses power. In this vignette, we'll take a look at some potential boundary issues arising from a priest's need for intimacy. Father Timothy Wazakowski has enrolled in a computer class taught by Connie Yoder. He's a good student with many questions, which she answers happily. In fact, Connie has developed quite a lot of admiration for the priest.
Good night. Good night, Connie. See you next week. Good night.
Well, Father Tim, you seem to be catching on.
Oh, thanks. It gets a little sticky at times, but you do explain things so nicely.
Well, I'm glad to help whenever I can. You know, it's a real pleasure to work with a dedicated student.
Oh, I don't know if my work is that dedicated. I just ask a lot of questions.
By the way, Tim, I've been wanting to talk to you. I was thinking maybe you'd like to come over to my place on Saturday for dinner and some nice conversation. Well, it might be a good opportunity to talk more about this new computer world you seem so interested in.
Oh, well, thanks, Connie. I'd enjoy doing that.
Excellent. Let me get my address. Do you know where that is?
Yes, I think so. Sure.
Oh, fine. I'll see you about 7, okay?
I'll be there.
On Saturday evening, Father Wazakowski was right on time. He and Connie shared the delightful dinner she had prepared and relaxed after the meal with a second bottle of wine.
You know, Connie, I've really enjoyed this evening. I don't often get an opportunity to kick back like this.
Well, same here. So I guess it's been a double treat for us, huh?
You might say that.
It's just so nice to have an interesting, intelligent man to talk to. Been a long time.
How long?
Well, let's see. It's 2 years since Warren and I were divorced, and there hasn't been anyone since. Not that he was all that great.
So you're divorced, eh?
Isn't everyone?
Let's look at the issues involved in this situation. First, there are individual needs and desires. Priests, like everyone else, have needs for intimacy. What is Father Timothy looking for in this relationship? And what about Connie? Where are the boundaries for both of them? Many times there is a sense of frustration or intense anxiety when priests begin to deal with their intimate selves. The need to be involved with another person, the need for warmth, the need for physical contact, the need to know someone cares. There are a number of issues to consider. A priest must be aware of his motivation for wanting to accept an invitation, as Father Timothy did. Is it strictly an enjoyable social event, or are there unaddressed agenda? One must consider such factors as the age, who's offering the invitation, and the comfort levels of the individuals involved. Doing this might provide insight into the nature of the relationship and how to proceed. The priest must consider the other person. Serious emotional and spiritual harm can result when either party is vulnerable. Given what Father Timothy knows about Connie, can he be true to himself and the nature of his vocation? He is developing a relationship with a woman who has her own needs. A priest's needs for intimacy are complex. In this vignette, you'll meet two priests in their early 40s, Father Dave and Father Jerome. They've been casual acquaintances, but during a week-long convocation, they've become better friends. Now it's over, and they're ready to head home.
It's really good to get outside again, even on a day like this.
Yeah, it is. I hear it's supposed to be great in a week or two. I can hardly wait to get up to my cabin next week.
Oh, excellent. You know, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it is. Say, Dave, how about you coming up with me next week? It's beautiful country there. And I think you'd like the solitude.
Cabin. You know, that sounds absolutely fantastic. Thanks for asking, Jerome.
Sure. Well, I wasn't expecting this much snow, but it sure is beautiful.
Oh, so is this cabin.
Yeah.
Father Dave and Father Jerome arrived at the cabin the following Wednesday. After getting things squared away and fixing dinner, they spend the afternoon in conversation, discovering they share many similar attitudes and feelings about life.
No, Dave, it's really something. How many people have you met that think exactly the way we do?
Well, I'd have to say exactly zip.
I'm really glad you decided to come up here with me.
I'm really glad to be here.
Later that day, Father Jerome makes subtle, intimate advances toward Father Dave. Though Father Dave reacted negatively at first, he eventually became more comfortable and accepting.
What now?
There are a number of complex issues involved in this situation. First, there are individual needs. Priests have needs for intimacy. Sometimes, however, the lack of true self-knowledge can cause ambiguous feelings, even self-doubt when thoughts of intimacy arise. Celibacy is a capacity for intimacy at a deep spiritual level. Thus, a priest's own sexuality can also be an important diagnostic tool for examining his own intimate needs and feelings, as well as those of others. This relationship between Father Jerome and Father Dave has additional complexities. Above all, there is the prospect and conflict of leading a double life. Let's consider some variables and vulnerabilities. These two priests need to look closely at their motivation for this relationship and whether to continue or terminate it. Our life commitment, celibate or otherwise, involves reverence for the other person and not using that person for one's own gratification. One who has chosen to be celibate has chosen not to have a life partner with whom to express love in many ways. After your discussion, please return to the tape for some closing comments.
It is important to know and understand the formational concerns in dealing with intimacy, sexuality, and healthy boundaries.
Again, these include awareness, sensitivity, motivation, judgment, and supervision, all of which are affected by personal attitudes. They must be ever present in our thoughts and actions if we are to minister effectively and to continue growing. The way we approach these concerns is grounded in our personal commitment to gospel values, our vocation, a reverence for all people, and the celibate lifestyle.
We invite you to continue to explore these themes and issues, and we hope you will pursue your conversations with other priests. For support in this, please contact the Director of Continuing Education in your diocese or religious province, or the NOCERC National Office in Chicago. Thank you for investing your time and energy in this important topic.